And today's lesson will be variables. I hope you can read this. Variables. They're a location in memory. And if you think about it, you can draw an analogy with a box that contains objects, or maybe an address at a house, because a house contains people objects. You put people into houses, you can put people into rooms. They're in a way like variables because they contain stuff. The values that are inside a variable can change. They don't change in design time, but they do change in runtime. And here you've got two diagrams. An example on the left is, let's say, a bathtub, and we call it full name. And inside we put King Conan. So if it was full of water and King Conan got in there, the bathtub would be the variable, or full name would be the variable, and then King Conan would be its contents. And the same if we had a box called age and we put 58 into it. If you asked what the contents of the box was, well, 58. If you look at your sheets, you'll also notice that there are three parts to a variable. You've got the name, the type, and the value. And the type has something interesting going on. You notice that funny little symbol? Anybody know what this is? It's a backwards E, indeed. In mathematics, it means belongs to. So we have type, and the type is one of these items. So integer, long, single, double, boolean, or string. So it can be one of those 6 data types is the type. And then, of course, the value that gets stored in the memory location. You'll notice the next line on your sheet, the dim statement, has 2 of the 3 properties. It has the name and it has the data type. When we create a variable, we declare it. And an easy way to help you remember what it is in Visual Basic is to think of declare in memory. That's not what dim stands for. Nobody really knows what dim stands for. But declare in memory is a nice, easy mnemonic. So you declare in memory the variable name, and you have to specify the data type. Later on, you can assign a value to it. That'll be the next lesson. Here we've got 5 examples of how you would declare a variable. Please feel free to copy them down onto the sheet. And on the right, there are 2 keywords that I want you to include in your code when you create programs. I will explain later on how to have Visual Basic automatically include them, but this is a little blurb that I also want you to copy down. If you'll flip over the sheet, we're now going to take a look at the rules for naming variables. And in this case, it's important to note that if you violate these rules, your program will not run. It's as simple as that. Visual Basic will refuse to run until these things have been fixed. So when we talk about variable names that are legal or illegal, we are referring to these particular rules. And there are 4 of them. If you read them, they are quite straightforward. So take a moment, copy these down. Here I'm giving you something that is called a guideline. They're not hard and fast rules like the ones that will make or break your program in Visual Basic, but these will make or break your mark. If you violate these style guidelines, your program will run. However, when I get to see the code, I get grumpy because you need to be following these style guidelines. They're fairly straightforward and they're easy to implement, so that also means they're easy for me to mark. So please make sure that you follow these 4 style guidelines when you are writing your programs. Here are the 4 style guidelines. First one is straightforward. Don't make your variable names too long. You've got up to 40 characters, but in reality, no program no programmer will write a variable name that is 40 characters long because that's insanely long. Try to avoid shortening words just for the sake of having short words. You can see the example here. Average instead of AVG. You really don't save much, and average makes more sense than AVG, or if you start to go with multiple words like actual amount and make it into ACT, you may know what you did today, but in a week you'll start wondering, and if anybody else reads your code, they'll have no clue. Make sure your variable names are descriptive. I mentioned this. In math class, you use LWH. In computer science, I'd like to see you using length, width, height, the full words. And also, there are two comments there for number 4. It's actually, I guess, two separate style guidelines. Do not use all uppercase, and use camelback notation. Camelback notation is where the beginning of each word is capitalized. And for variable names in Visual Basic, the first letter is always capitalized. That's a stylistic rule that applies to Visual Basic. Other languages do things differently. You'll find that it just depends upon the prevailing thought process of the person who first created the language. And sometimes within a language you'll see different teams having different conventions. These are style guidelines, they're not rules, and they're guidelines for a reason because they vary from language to language. Whereas the rules that I just showed you, the 4 rules, they pretty much apply to any language that you will encounter. Here I have 12, well actually I guess on my example I have 14 legal or illegal questions. On your sheet you have 12 of them. What I'd like you to do is make some predictions about whether a particular variable name is legal or illegal. So I'll show you. The first one is dog. So if we look at dog, I highlighted it in green. It's a perfectly legal name. There is nothing wrong with dog. 7, while it may be the written version of a number, this one too is perfectly legit. Eye color. Take a moment and look at eye color. What do you think? And why do you say illegal? Indeed, it has a space in it, so here I've colored it red. I'd like you to continue with the next items, and we'll see how you do. I've already been told that 3rd edition is illegal, which means it's not acceptable because it starts with a number. Never start a variable with a number. You can have numbers anywhere else in a variable name, just not at the beginning. What about single? What's wrong with it? It's a reserved word. How long? Perfectly legit. Nothing wrong with it. Web hits? Perfectly legit. Web underscore hits? Nothing wrong with it. You can use underscore. That is the only symbol you are allowed to use. Max hyphen volume. Not allowed to use a symbol. Largest number. Perfectly acceptable. 12 eggs. Starts with a number. Volume number 9. Not acceptable because it has a number sign in it, which is a symbol. And as a bonus, E1321 8E. Is it acceptable or not? It's acceptable. Yes, it is. Nothing wrong with it. And now, the number of push-ups Danny did last year. Why is it illegal? No. I will point out one thing. You see how I have the little legend on top to count? It goes up to 41 characters in this case. Visual Basic would reject this variable name because it is too long. If you chopped off the last word or one letter, it would be correct. but it's not. So for the homework, complete number 5 on the homework sheet that you are about to receive. And that's it for today.